we go. Okay, well, good afternoon. I hope everyone had a good lunch. Enjoyed the, I think the chocolate cake got a particularly good review, so hope everyone enjoyed that. So it gives me real pleasure to introduce Sajeeda Merali, Chief Executive of the PPA. For those that don't know her, I think 3 years you've been at PPA, Saj, 2021. Prior to that, she was Chief Revenue Officer at Statesman Media Group, and prior to that spent 20 years running various commercial teams in the B2B sector for Incisive, InfoPro and Euromoney. And yeah, the format of the session today, we're going to be doing, Saj, I think, is going to speak for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we will have a bit of a Q&A, a bit of a fireside chat, and obviously if there is any time for questions, then we'd be happy to take them. So with that, I will hand over to Saj, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much, Saj.
Right, hello everyone. I have, firstly, thanks Tom for the intro, but I have the pleasure today of getting your conference mode ready again after lunch. So not an easy task, as I'm trying to break down what was a 70-page report, but I'm going to try and do my best. Before I kick off, actually, I thought it was a good idea to give you a quick reminder of the PPA and its members. So the PPA stands for the Professional Publishers Association. We represent a broad church of about 200 members now, and they range from large multinational consumer magazines writing about people's interests and passions to global B2B businesses that are providing insights about their sectors. And that really sort of ranges from, you know, businesses that are shaping our world today, from technology and pharma and financial services and energy, to name a few. But we've also got a long tail of independent publishers ranging from about 15 million revenue top line all the way down to sort of startup founder-led organisations that might be serving quite niche communities. So I guess one of the questions we always ask ourselves is, why are they all part of the same trade association? And the strategic glue that sort of binds all of these members together is that they're all producing trusted editorial for their highly engaged specialist communities. And that is true for a community that is brought together based on fashion or food or football, or because they need that content to help them do their job better. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an overview of who our membership includes. And back to the agenda today, the highlights from the most recent PPA Market Sector Insight Report, which was commissioned to explore the evolving landscape of the UK publishing sector. And a little bit about the methodology. The insights were brought together initially through a survey where over half of PPA members took part. And then we overlaid that with one-to-one interviews with a really great portion, actually, of CEOs giving up their time. Thank you if that was anyone in the room today, looking at Nick here. But, you know, that really helped us overlay that data with the real stories and use cases. And we worked with Qatardin Media to bring some of those insights and findings together in one place, and to provide members with a reflection on sort of what the market's thinking, what they're feeling, and also what they're doing right now. So as mentioned, it's a big report, and I'm going to focus on those areas that I think surprised me and that I think are important for the sector as we move into H2 of this year. So I'm going to start off with how we're feeling as a sector. I think the overwhelming sense that I got from the research and report was that we're a sector that's really forging ahead. I've added that additional word confidently on purpose because I think that was the marked change for me. We're forging ahead confidently. And for the first time in a long time, we saw confidence in every area, from revenue growth, future opportunities, product and audience strategies, we saw real commitment from publishers to accelerate growth. And I think we're all aware that market conditions have been tough for everyone. But there was, I think through necessities, lots of members shared stories of transformations that should have taken years or happening in months or weeks in some cases. I think there was a strong sense of optimism across everyone that we spoke to, and this was infectious. So again, a surprise to me and not something that we'd seen in a long time, actually. And at the heart of that confidence and optimism, there was a renewed belief in the trusted quality content that's been created. There were lots of success stories that were shared that revolved around new formats, new processes, and new platforms, and successes that were driven by a real understanding of the audiences that were being served. So I suppose the question is, what does the future hold? Will things calm down? I don't think so. I think our future is very much based on constant evolution and transformation to ensure that quality content we create continues to meet customers' needs. And so there is more change to come. And I think that continuous transformation seems to be the new normal at the moment. And I think publishers are sort of embracing that way of working. And whilst this could be considered a challenge, that strong confidence and optimism suggests that as a sector we plan to forge ahead, and all members that participated talked about opportunities on the horizon to help create a more sustainable future for specialist media. And this confidence and optimism translated into an inner strength. Every growth story that was shared was underpinned by an inner strength and belief in what publishers do. And comments like these from Amanda at Faversham House, one of our B2B independent publishers, I think really set the tone. We get knocked down, we get back up again. Revenue declines as a result of COVID were tough, but we saw time and time again how the specialist media sector were redefining their future. So, where has this confidence and optimism come from? Well, I think that we have learnt some important lessons over the last 2 years, and these lessons are now starting to pay off. So I'll share a few examples. I think digital scale was something that came up. Digital scale at all costs is no longer the only answer. That incessant focus on driving digital scale has finally been called out as a hindrance rather than a help. And the report shows that publishers are making a significant step away from a strategy focused on building scale at all costs with the hope that advertising can just monetize it. And as a result, the balance of revenues are shifting. Focus has moved to consumer revenues, so things like subscriptions, membership, events revenue lines are all being prioritised, and customer direct revenue lines have been elevated, and publishers are really doubling down on growth in this area. And now that doesn't mean that advertising doesn't remain an important revenue stream. It absolutely is. But it just means that there's a heightened focus on customers that I think that will improve those advertising conversations as well. So magazine publishers are creating more quality interactions, which in turn will make more meaningful connections for advertising partners. We've also realised that there's no benefit in that continued fight between print and digital. There's no winner there, and the reality is it was never our decision to make. Publishers are considering all formats strategically based on the purpose of connecting with the customer, and for some of those that actually does mean really doubling down on print. So having a clear customer value proposition that meets your customer core needs has never been more important in a future strategy. I suppose something to mention is publishers have all been guilty of trying to do a bit of everything when it came to diversifying those revenues, and they told us that focus and prioritisation is now essential in order to build a sustainable business. And as a result, there is definitely more of a forensic approach. And that combined with a willingness to do something differently really stood out. So regurgitating the same plans, doing it the same way that we've always done it is really no longer the answer. I think the future is more and more testing and learning, to determine what content we make available, where we make it available, and the format and the price, actually. So this is Nina, PPA chair and also chair of Harmsworth Media. And that also includes New Scientist in its portfolio. And she actually captures this perfectly with the phrase active rebalancing. Our future success is very much based on continuously recalibrating our business and strategies to retain and grow both audiences and revenues. And importantly, putting your customer needs equal to revenue growth is also key to generating strong business in the long term. So, how has this impacted revenues? I thought I'd better bring it back to the money after all this talk of feelings. Well, we've got a very different revenue breakdown. This graph shows the average share of revenue across the sector today. It looks very different in terms of the split from just a few years ago. Actually, one size or definition no longer fits all in our sector. 96% of publishers we spoke to have a presence across multiple platforms, but the mix of revenue is very unique to each business based on its size, its customer base, the assets, brands, etc. So what does this tell us? Well, it shows a shift, not surprisingly, to digital revenues and a suggestion that maybe as a sector we've now surpassed that digital tipping point. So digital advertising is now at 24%, with print advertising at 20%. And we can also see that notable shift from advertising to consumer revenues too, with events at 20% and subscriptions now at 17%. So finally, we can also see the growth and strength of other media platforms, podcasts, videos, e-commerce, all the areas where publishers are experimenting to find out what works best for them, for their audiences and their business. So, what's the magic formula, I hear you ask? I don't have the answer to that, but Chris Duncan, who was recently at Bauer, had some really interesting advice. He talked about ruthless execution and prioritisation of revenue streams. Finding the magic bullet or formula that works for the business and audience is vital. Finding it fast is key to continued growth. So just a little bit more about those revenue streams. Members told us about the areas which shaped performance. And actually, before I go into that, I should say that this was a report that was published in November 23. So when I refer to 22-23, it was with that in mind. So members told us about the areas which shaped performance in 22 and had the strongest predicted growth in 23. And results all pointed to areas of consumer revenue, so where audiences are voting with their money for magazine content and experiences. So in comparison to 22, twice as many publishers anticipated growth in 23 for membership and podcasts. Live events, digital subscriptions, memberships, newsletters, all robust in 22, but expected further growth ranges from 15 all the way up to 100% in some cases in 23. Publishers told us time and again that there was an intentional focus on having the customer take a more significant role in that revenue picture. And I think, firstly, that gave a more stable revenue base, especially with the recurring nature of some of those revenue streams like subscriptions. There's opportunities for data capture, but also that knowledge to inform further innovation and product development. So, what are the key growth enablers that we need to focus on for the future? Well, one thing I think was certain is that, for a business today, we need to think about more than just the money. One of the key takeouts from the report is the ESG responsibility in areas like ED&I and sustainability. And as Daniel from TTG shares, being and doing good now matters more than ever. And these are the areas where increased focus makes a difference, both to you, your people, and your bottom line. So publishers can no longer ignore these key growth enablers, and the good news is they're not. The report is filled with advice, top tips, guidelines based on real experiences. Firstly, people and talent. People need to be front and centre in the business. Publishers told us that the ability to retain and attract employees continues to get harder, and teams want to be heard, supported and respected and have a chance to have their say. And there was, this slide, I suppose, shows that there was a real commitment from publishers to improving their career, cultural and financial benefits for their people. And this was actually a standout element in the report. 73% of magazine publisher members improved career development and improved training opportunities. And as you can see from the graph here, the scores are high for other things too, like increasing pay and benefits. ED&I, we also saw real evidence that publishers were prioritising diversity and inclusive cultures. 1 in 2 PPA members were engaging in some form of ED&I activity. There's a growing awareness from all that there is more work to do here, but there's also a huge awareness actually that considerable talent and revenue benefits are there as a result. Creating a sustainable business is also very high on the agenda. Sustainability measures resonate with consumers, advertisers and suppliers, all of whom are more likely to do business and spend with a company which shows that commitment. 2/3 of publishers have sustainability measures in place, higher than, according to Aldermore Bank, 53% was the average. And in addition to best practice in the report, the PPA Action Net Zero programme is completely free to access for members and lays out what we need to do clearly as a sector. And data, it remains critical to know everything that you can know about your customer and continue to increase and extend that use of data across the business, I think, is becoming a real must. Data is fundamental to every strategic decision. It can help prioritisation and investment decisions, provide real-time feedback on success with customers, and I suppose really give that performance data that advertising partners always want and need. And my observation here is that we're doing the easy stuff really well, actually, but what we could be prioritising more is that strategic use of data, like around things like personalisation, measuring lifetime value. That will see a real significant impact on revenues overall. And finally, I could not mention our favourite 2 words, 2 letters, AI. It's come up a lot in the agendas today, and it came up a lot in the report as well. It's an area where it might be a bit too early to predict exactly how it's going to enable growth, but working out how AI and other emerging tech can benefit business is the first step. So as well as the best practice guidelines in the report and the considerations that the PPA published, we saw examples of use cases peppered across, things like the festival that we did earlier this year, and it comes up a lot in our steering groups as well. Publishers sharing some of the experimentation that they're doing within their organisations. Lots of experimentation. Almost 1 in 2 publishers have started exploring the opportunity that AI can bring. 1/3 of those who haven't will do very soon. A big concern from publishers was actually maintaining the quality of content produced, and that AI would never be a substitute for human creativity. However, that's not stopping that experimentation, and the slide shows just some of the areas that AI is now being used by publishers, ranging from content research, SEO and editing as well. And just my final slide before I sit down with Tom, I wanted to summarise, I suppose, the key things that really stayed with me since working on that report. For me, they are the key things a business needs to build a more sustainable future for magazine media. And they underpin every success story that was shared by some of the people I put up here, and there were many more in the report itself. But confident leadership, I think this was a standout change for me, a renewed inner belief and strength. That customer first approach, meeting customer needs, are now at the top of the magazine publishing agenda, evident from the growth in consumer revenues and speed of transformation that we're seeing. Being a good business, actually, putting your people and the issues that are important to them front and centre will drive revenues. that entrepreneurial spirit, you know, new flexibility and agility has emerged, and the future is all about that experimentation. And finally, just that ruthless prioritization, doing less but doing it better, and focusing on that long-term profitability over short-term wins will hopefully continue to show that we are forging ahead as a sector. And thank you for listening.